Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story: President Trump is warning that China or any country sending weapons to Iran would face a 50% tariff. It comes after reports suggesting China is preparing to supply Iran with air defense systems.
Well, if China does that, China's going to have big problems, okay?
The U.S. shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. What does it mean for the world and for China?
I mean, Iran has been hanging this sword of Damocles over the global oil market since I was a small child.
New evidence in a Toronto bomb hoax that led to the cancellation of Shenyang Performing Arts. The suspect says he is tied to the Chinese Communist Party. And in the South China Sea, the Philippines accuses Chinese fishermen of pouring a highly toxic chemical into waters near a disputed shoal. At the same time, the U.S. and Australia have joined the Philippines for joint naval drills. Washington is closely watching whether Beijing is supplying weapons to Iran. This follows media reports citing U.S. intelligence saying it may be happening. On Sunday, President Trump warned he would impose a 50% tariff on any country, including China, if it does so. The reports are testing U.S.-China relations as a Trump-Xi summit draws closer. NTD's Flora Hua breaks down the high-stakes developments involving Washington, Beijing, and Tehran.
China has not provided direct military assistance to Iran since the conflict began. President Trump is urging Beijing to keep it that way.
China is preparing to ship weapons to Iran.
Well, if China does that, China's going to have big problems, okay?
Trump's warning follows a CNN report citing U.S. intelligence. It says China is preparing to ship Iran additional air defense systems in the coming weeks. The shipments reportedly include shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles known as MANPADS. In a Fox News interview Sunday, the president said he had seen the reports and warned of serious consequences for any country involved. But he also questioned the accuracy of the reporting.
I doubt they would do that because I have a relationship, but maybe they did a little bit at the beginning, but I don't think they would anymore. No. But if we catch them doing that, they get a 50% tariff, which is That's a staggering amount.
The CNN report added that Beijing is seeking to transship the defense supplies through third countries to conceal their origin. Zooming out, Iranian forces have used MANPADS targeting U.S. aircraft. President Trump said an F-15 fighter jet was hit by a handle-shoulder missile fired by Iranian forces. It remains unclear whether that weapon was made in China, but the Chinese weapons described in the report are similar to those used in such attacks. U.S. and European officials have accused Beijing for providing Iran with dual-use equipments, items meant for civilian use but that can also be adapted for military purposes. President Trump is scheduled to meet Xi Jinping next month to discuss economic and geopolitical issues. What's more, experts say China's support may stem from its economic need to maintain close ties with Iran. China continues to rely heavily on cheap Iranian oil shipments while maintaining economic leverage over Tehran. Since the war began, gasoline prices in China have jumped about 11%. That's impacting a wide range of sectors, including transportation, food prices, and the chemical industry, worsening an already slowed Chinese economy. Flora Hua, NTD News.
Staying in the Middle East, what does the U.S. shutting down the Strait of Hormuz mean for the world and for China? NTD's Chris Spears was joined by Rod Martin, political analyst and founder and CEO of Martin Capital, to discuss.
Well, it would be hard to be happier, honestly. I mean, Iran has been hanging this sword of Damocles over the global oil market since I was a small child. And the threat is the potency in it. Oh my goodness, Iran might block the strait. What would we do then? 20% of the world's oil goes through there. Okay, well, now you've threatened it and you've shown that you can't actually make it stick. What worked here for them is the fear that got insurers to back off. But all the U.S. Navy has to do is show up with escort ships, and that game is over. But if we control it, the Iranians can't. So now what was actually an asset for them is just slipping completely away. They have incentivized all their neighbors to build pipeline infrastructure to get around the Strait of Hormuz. They have incentivized their neighbors to further support the United States in its efforts. And this blockade cuts off all Iran's money that it's earning through exports of oil to China. There's very, very little they can get to China that doesn't have to pass through the strait.
Yeah, so staying with that, the president said that at some point all ships will be allowed to go in and out of the strait. How do you view that?
Well, all ships except Iran's. And Iran, of course, will face quite a difficulty here until and unless it either makes peace on Donald Trump's terms, which I think he summarized better than anybody earlier in March when he called it unconditional surrender. Or in the alternative, we actually get a free Iran, the people rise up, overthrow this oppressive regime that actually executes young girls for getting raped. It's one of the most wicked forces on the planet. And if it falls and there's a free Iran, it's a boon for peace and prosperity to the whole region and the whole world.
How do you think this move will impact global oil prices and eventually what we pay at the pump? I mean, I'm paying $4 a gallon right now.
In the short term, we're going to have the same problems we've been having. Obviously, oil is elevated. At the same time, painfully obviously, I'm paying $1 a gallon less than I was under Joe Biden. So the inconvenience to the United States is relatively slight. The real inconvenience is to East Asia and to Europe. Europe gets a lot of its oil from the Persian Gulf. East Asia gets most of its oil from the Persian Gulf. So what we're seeing now is an enormous convoy of tankers, and the president posted a map of this streaming from the Gulf of Oman and from East Asia around Africa toward Texas. We're going to sell an insane amount of oil and gas from the United States. That's going to be a boon to investors here, retirees, oil workers, the entire U.S. economy at the expense of the Middle East and Russia and frankly China. So in the very near term, we will still have elevated prices. In the slightly longer term, we're going to see prices come back down a lot. And with Iran no longer able to threaten the Strait of Hormuz going forward, I believe that the risk premium that's been baked in since the 80s is going to go away. And there's a very real chance we could see oil drop $10 or even $20 beneath where it was globally before this war began.
In closing here, Rod, President Trump is threatening China with 50% tariffs if it aids Iran militarily. What would 50% tariffs do to China's economy if that ended up going into place?
Well, it would be really, really bad. To start with, the Iranians have gotten over 40% of their oil for the last number of years in this steeply discounted sanctioned form. They're buying 90% of Iran's supply. They're buying, a huge percentage of Russia's and Venezuela's. And all of a sudden, that's all going away. So they've been paying way below market for that oil. That's a huge shock to their economy just by having to pay market prices. And of course, market prices aren't what they were a month and a half ago. Market prices are much elevated now. So it's a double shock to China's system. Now, if on top of that, you add 50% tariffs, that's going to put them into a recession, if not worse. There's just no escaping it. Their economy is already teetering. Honest analysts have been pointing this out now for a couple of years. They're really in trouble. So what the president is threatening is really meaningful. And my guess is we're going to see the Chinese back off on some of these discussions about arms. They're going to bluster. They're not really going to ship much. We demonstrated that over the last year when they didn't ship Iran any modern fighter jets or other things that they needed after the 12-day war. They're going to back off. And we're going to have a very interesting summit meeting in May where I think we'll actually get to a relatively decent deal between the United States and China.
And we will definitely be following that closely. Rod Martin, political analyst and founder and CEO of Martin Capital, thank you so much.
Thank you.
A new development in the bomb hoax that led to the cancellation of Shenyang performances in Toronto. New evidence suggests the perpetrator is from China and has ties to the Communist Party. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
The Chinese Communist Party extending its reach into a free country, shutting down dance performances with fake bomb threats simply because it disagrees with the message. Now, new evidence tying that disruption to Beijing. The person behind the hoax that forced Toronto's Four Seasons Center to cancel 6 Shenyang performances is now believed to be linked to the CCP. New emails sent from the same address used in the original threat, and police say there was never a credible danger. 2 new emails written in Chinese appear to show the sender openly aligning with the Chinese Communist Party. In one message, the sender writes, "The Toronto Four Seasons incident was my most successful one. Canada is hardly worth taking seriously. Even my motherland's Communist Party couldn't make the Shenyang MC cry, yet I actually did it." The message mocks a Shenyang host who, at a press conference following the bomb hoax, had just shared a deeply personal story about her parents being sent to forced labor and brainwashing centers in China for practicing the spiritual practice of Falun Dafa. A second email escalates the rhetoric, claiming police around the world have become like dogs, running around everywhere at my command. Shenyang has received more than 150 similar bomb and death threats in recent years, all of them hoaxes, but until now, no venue had canceled performances. Shenyang's mission, showcasing traditional Chinese culture before communism, which has long put it at odds with Beijing. Canadian officials are now condemning the incident, warning that it reflects a broader pattern of intimidation linked to the CCP, which targets voices it opposes.
This is most atrocious, especially on the days when we're talking about Chinese interference in Canadian democracy.
Shenyang has been targeted because of its effort to showcase traditional Chinese culture.
And despite the intimidation, Shenyang presses on, bringing its message to audiences in more than 200 cities worldwide. For NTD News Washington, I'm Jack Bradley.
The Philippines is flagging a toxic threat near its military outpost within the South China Sea. The island nation says it has confirmed Chinese boats poured cyanide, a highly toxic chemical, into waters near a key outpost on Monday. Officials warn it could harm the environment and put troops at risk. They say lab tests confirmed bottles recovered from Chinese vessels last year contained cyanide, a highly toxic chemical. Philippine forces reportedly seized 10 bottles across multiple incidents near Second Thomas Shoal, just west of the Philippines. Authorities warn the substance could weaken the structure of the grounded Filipino warship BRP Sierra Madre, which serves as a military outpost. It could also kill surrounding fish, cutting off a key food source for stationed troops. The National Security Council called Beijing's use of cyanide a form of sabotage. The dispute comes as tensions continue between the Philippines and China over the South China Sea, which Beijing claims almost entirely. That's despite an international ruling rejecting those claims. Manila says it will increase Navy and Coast Guard patrols in the area to prevent further environmental damage. Staying with the Philippines, the U.S. and Australia have joined the country for their second joint maritime exercises this year. The drills brought together warships, fighter jets, and surveillance aircraft in coordinated operations in the South China Sea. The 4-day exercises, held from April 9th to 12th, aim to strengthen maritime defense capabilities, according to the Philippine military. It said the operations highlight deepening defense cooperation and a shared commitment to regional security. The Philippines deployed F/A-50 fighter jets, while Australia sent P-8A Poseidon aircraft, and the U.S. deployed the USS Ashland. The drills come just ahead of large-scale annual war games starting April 20th. Notably, Japan will take part in the games for the first time. Investigation into AI chip smuggling to China escalates. A new investigation Friday is raising questions over how cutting-edge AI chips may have reached Beijing despite U.S. export controls. It comes after U.S. authorities charged Supermicrocomputer with allegedly smuggling billions of dollars worth of NVIDIA chips into China. Soon after, shares of a small Chinese computing firm called Sharetronic Data Technology dropped sharply. Reports linked it to purchases of powerful servers containing restricted NVIDIA chips. Those chips are used to power AI systems like chatbots and were banned from being sold to China without U.S. approval in 2022. Documents reviewed by Bloomberg suggest the firm bought hundreds of these systems through subsidiaries. The purchases made last year included servers worth $92 million. Both Supermicro and NVIDIA say their products weren't approved to be resold or transferred without permission. U.S. officials have tightened export rules in recent years to limit China's access to advanced AI technology over national security concerns. Experts warn that Beijing may use America's cutting-edge chips to strengthen its military. The Chinese firm at the center of the report says it rents out AI servers to other companies, but it has not disclosed whether it's using U.S.-made hardware. Coming up, NASA's Artemis II crew back on Earth, and the next lunar mission is already in the works. A peaceful appeal in central Beijing marking history nearly 27 years ago, a symbol of resilience in the face of totalitarianism. A rally in D.C. was held to commemorate the event. And a major Chagos deal hits U.S. roadblock. A U.K. plan to transfer sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius is on hold after Washington withdrew support. More on that after the break here on China in Focus. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. NASA's Artemis II astronauts are back on Earth after a historic mission around the moon. Now, the space agency is taking its next steps towards returning humans to the lunar surface. This is part of U.S. efforts to counter China in space. Here's that story.
NASA is already looking ahead after a historic return from the moon. The Artemis II crew safely back on Earth and arriving in Houston to a rousing welcome. The mission wrapping up the first human journey to the moon in more than 50 years.
After a brief 53-year intermission, the show goes on, and NASA is back in the business of sending astronauts to the moon and bringing them home safely.
A milestone mission traveling farther than any astronauts before.
24 hours ago, the Earth was that big out the window, and we were doing Mach 39, and here we are back at Ellington at home.
The astronauts back with their families after nearly 10 days in deep space.
Being 200,000 plus miles away from home, like before you launch, it feels like it's the greatest dream on Earth. And when you're out there, you just want to get back to your families and your friends. It's a special thing to be a human, and it's a special thing to be on planet Earth. Thank you.
And the recovery effort now complete. USS John P. Murtha is officially back in San Diego after picking up the astronauts from their capsule in the Pacific Ocean. Now, focus shifting to what comes next. NASA setting its sights on Artemis III, the next step toward returning humans to the lunar surface. That mission expected to test critical systems, including docking with a lunar lander in orbit. Private companies racing to be ready, with SpaceX and Blue Origin developing lunar landers.
Artemis II is the opening act in America's return to the moon. Artemis III will start being assembled, and the next crew will begin preparing to play their part. As we return to the lunar surface, we build the base, and we never give up the moon again.
All of this laying the groundwork for something even bigger.
This mission moves us closer to exploring more of the moon, unlocking scientific discoveries, expanding economic opportunity, and laying the groundwork for the first human missions to have a sustained presence on the moon and for us to have our astronauts venture to Mars.
For NASA, Artemis II is just the beginning.
April 25th will mark the 27th anniversary of a historic peaceful appeal in China. On that day, more than 10,000 Falun Gong practitioners gathered in central Beijing, calling for their right to practice their beliefs of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. A rally was held in D.C. on Saturday to commemorate this occasion. NTD's Sam Wang has more.
I'm here outside the Chinese embassy in Washington, D.C., where a group of Falun Gong practitioners are gathering behind me. They're here to commemorate a historic peaceful appeal in China nearly 27 years ago, an event that marked the dawn of a nationwide persecution. A crowd in yellow t-shirts performing a set of gentle flowing exercises. The peaceful scene bears resemblance to a gathering in Beijing more than 2 decades ago. On April 25, 1999, over 10,000 Falun Gong practitioners lined up outside the Chinese Communist Party's central headquarters. They were appealing for the right to practice their faith amid a period of growing suppression.
I remember when the April 25th incident happened. The Falun Gong practitioners displayed such perseverance, such great kindness and forbearance. Their noble and upright conduct truly shocked the entire world.
But little did they know that this peaceful gathering would become the prelude to a nationwide persecution. That July, the CCP launched a brutal campaign to eradicate Falun Gong, using propaganda to frame the April appeal as an attempt to overthrow the regime. Falun Gong practitioners were soon arrested, tortured, and killed for staying fast to their faith.
During the Chinese New Year in 2001, a time when families are supposed to be together, my mother was being held in a brainwashing center, my father in prison, and I was detained in a forced labor camp. I also knew a family whose situation was especially tragic. Both parents and my friend's 3 siblings were tortured to death, one after another.
The persecution continues unabated till this day. According to Minghui.org, the deaths of more than 5,300 Falun Gong practitioners have been confirmed, but the number is merely a fraction of the actual death toll due to the CCP's efforts to cover up the scale of its abuses. And an untold number have been murdered on demand by the communist regime for their organs, which are sold for profit in the ongoing practice of state-sponsored organ harvesting.
For me, it's so terrifying how this is industrialized from the very top of the CCP down to military hospitals, to doctors. This is unimaginable.
Despite facing enormous adversity, Falun Gong practitioners are still committed to telling the truth about the persecution and reminding the world of the universal values of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. Sam Wang, NTD News, Washington, D.C.
A major deal on hold after the U.S. pulls back. A UK agreement to transfer sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius is on hold after the Trump administration withdrew its support. Britain says the bill missed its deadline in Parliament on Saturday. President Trump backed the plan at first, but later reversed course in January, calling it an act of great stupidity.
The UK has paused the bill, but officials still hope to revive the agreement. The Chagos Islands have been under British control since 1814. The islands located in the Indian Ocean include Diego Garcia, where a strategic U.S.-Britain military base is stationed. Diego Garcia has supported U.S. military operations for decades, including in Iraq and Afghanistan. The proposal would have transferred sovereignty to Mauritius while keeping the base under a long-term UK lease. It's worth noting that Mauritius has very close ties with the Chinese regime. Supporters say the bill aimed to reduce legal challenges after UN pressure to return the islands. Critics warned of strategic risks involving China and Russia. The future of the deal is now uncertain.
That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. For on-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.